reliable from anywhere.
What if the early fathers of the church have a lot written about Christ aside from the Gospels?
I don't think they did. I don't think they have anything about Christ aside from the Gospels.
Yeah. Look into
No, they don't have anything. And everything they say about Christ is out of the Gospels. And even Paul has nothing about Christ in his letters, except he might, or someone was crucified at some point. He doesn't know when, he doesn't know how, he doesn't know why, and he's supposed to have lived at the time. You say, well, he didn't mention it in his letters. Well, if this is the most important person in the universe, you're writing about the god Dionysus, and you're living about 3 or 4 years after the god Dionysus was killed, or at least you were living even when he was killed, and you're writing to other people about this god Dionysus. I'm just using Dionysus on purpose because it's a different context, and you have no affection for Dionysus. Then normally you'd say, well, you know, when Dionysus said this, or when Dionysus said that, or when, you know, when so-and-so met Dionysus, and Dionysus would be totally under your consciousness, like John F. Kennedy. I mean, for 20 years after John F. Kennedy was killed, people didn't stop talking about him and what he did here, what he did there, and so on and so forth. And a lot of it was negative, actually, because of the, you know, bathtub affairs he was having with 2 or 3 women at the same time. But aside from that, you know, there was an awful lot of stories being told constantly. So you would think that someone like Paul would know something about him, and he would get it from Paul. So anyway, that's again a matter of your taste. The point what I'm trying to say is that if you set the Gospels aside, you have no information about Jesus. You say, well, why set them aside? I'm not saying you should, but it depends if you consider those reliable. And the stories, to my mind, as you get older, are less reliable than they appear when you're younger. And also you have more courage when you're older to stand against the attitude of society. But that may or may not be the case, and everyone has to make their own decision on that. We're talking about historical fact. All I'm saying is there's a lot more about James in these texts to get your teeth into than you would expect, and more about James perhaps than any other person of a seemingly reliable kind. And it mostly comes in this book 2 of Eusebius. It's not just that Hegesippus is going to talk about him in book 2 of Eusebius, but all the others who seem to know of him. And yet our Gospels and our other writings, except for Paul, who does know about him, don't acknowledge him. So I think there's an ideological point there. The reason for these things are ideological and polemical, and the people who compiled the materials we have, obviously were not terribly enthusiastic about James as a person, that they wanted to communicate to us much about him. Yes?
I spoke to someone from the Syriac Church to ask a little question about this, and I'm not sure if you've ever been introduced to this, I'm going to call it theory, but it's the belief of the Syriac, was that James, being part of the other brothers of the Lord from Joseph, did not follow his brother Jesus Christ until after.
No, I don't. That's just
after the resurrection, and that's why he's not in the gospel.
That's just
okay.
That's just
Okay.
Obviously, they're going to. You know, I've already answered all those questions in my James book, and they just read the introduction. Very simple. Who would have known more about Jesus, and who would have followed him more? Those who were closest to him, those who spent their whole life with him, those who succeeded him, those who supposedly witnessed the resurrection and things of that kind. Those who, and now you're telling me that he didn't follow his brother. Someone else who was the enemy of Jesus followed him better. Now, come on. This may be good for theology. No, but we've been through all this, and I don't want the private debate because I want to move on. We're late in this class. I'm not trying to get testy like Bush, but I want to get moving because what you're throwing up to me is what, again, people say in churches and other environments. We've been through all that. You have to make up that decision, but I've already answered that question about 5 times in this class in terms of what I just told you, that I don't accept the fact that an enemy, that's me, you don't have to follow me. The 10 billion people follow what you just told me. So I don't know why you look so puzzled. The puzzlement is only for you to decide if you're going to follow 10 billion people or you're going to follow the evidence trail. And the evidence trail suggests, quite simply, that someone who was the enemy of Christ, who knew nothing about him, who didn't follow him in his lifetime, knew more about Christ than his closest brother, lived his whole life with him, and succeeded him.
May I have one more question?
No, go ahead. What's your answer to that particular thing, then?
I know, I'm not sure which...
What's the answer to that question?
In the Gospels, there's
Why didn't you
story.
throw this up to the person who told you that position, that James didn't follow Jesus?
He did follow him after the
No,
resurrection.
why didn't you ask the person who said that to you? Well, look, how could the person who succeeded him and so on and so forth know less about him than someone who never met him?
The person who succeeded him was Peter.
No.
Oh,
All our texts say it wasn't Peter. That's the theology. Our texts say James succeeded him.
One more question about the brothers. There's a story in the Gospels when the
I said the Gospels say Peter succeeded him.
No, but I want to go back to the
No,
brothers.
but here,
if I
the
may.
Gospels say Peter succeeded him, and don't even say that, because the Gospels just say, "You are my rock," or something like that to Peter. And after that, Peter is portrayed as basically someone who misunderstands Jesus, who fails in his faith, who sinks in the Sea of Galilee, who denies the Master three. So the Gospels are even hostile to Peter.
Not really, if you
Oh,
continue
absolutely.
in it.
Well, absolutely.
But the question that I had was when they approached Jesus and they said, "Your brothers are outside.
Who are my mother and brother to me?
Whoever believes in me." Well,
Look, these are good lines. These are very...
I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
not
there's
trying
nothing to
to
understand.
oppose you.
These are very good and appealing, how should we put it, aphorisms that went through the whole Mediterranean world. And again, I don't know why you look so puzzled to me. You have to make your choice up if you consider the position set forth in those materials as if some unknown person had a tape recorder and was recording all these materials, when in fact the actual events that are recorded, not only in Paul and elsewhere, seem to imply just the opposite. So what I'm saying, you're talking about a theological, polemical position. That is, that there's certain people, all documents have usually a spin, an agenda, an Acts 2 grind. There are people who compiled those documents who basically had a position that they felt the Messiah should or would or did have. And that position is Paulinized.